Hello, and welcome to Recruiting Hell. I'm glad you're here with us today. I'm your host, Robb. Welcome to episode 15 of Recruiting Hell. And again today, we are very honored and privileged to have a great guest to launch more of our actionable side of Recruiting Hell to help you get a new or better job. You know, you can actually have a better shot at that new or better job when you listen to others. And that's a really important part, I feel, of this show. So our episode today, I initially wanted to call Interview 101. But I think that almost does a disservice to you as the listener because you know some of those simple things. And I think it does a very big disservice to our guest and doesn't probably quite stretch her legs, if you will, really give that the best that she can give. So she's here because she has great things to share, and I have a feeling that some softball questions all day long about how to look when you interview or show up 15 minutes early really aren't going to be the best use of anyone's time. So as we begin this episode, we always take a moment to recognize and thank those who are just joining us, and of course those who have listened for a long time. You're all amazing, and this show wouldn't go anywhere without you folks. Now, you may or may not know, especially if you're tuning in for the first time, we do a quick catch-up for those who are here on their first go, mostly because I feel it's important to outline the purpose of the show and why we call it Recruiting Hell. It's not just a catchy name and fire graphics. So Recruiting Hell is a term that I use to describe the frustration of job hunting in 2020. If you head to any major job site or employer, there are endless opportunities, but it's gotten more and more difficult to land them for the average person. The whole goal of this show is to give you the tools to help find a job that brings you fulfillment and self-worth. Now, not everyone defines their self-worth on their job, but in American culture, we place a very heavy value on being a contributing member of society. And of course, not hating what you do every day to pay the bills is a pretty big benefit to anyone. The whole goal of this show is to help you navigate through recruiting hell by avoiding the scam jobs, the bad employers, the too much work for too little pay, and the mental stress of being jobless or in a position that you dislike. We're here to help you keep your chin up after your 200th application with no response, your 50th rejection email this month, or a great opportunity ghosting you. So in a nutshell, this show is about helping people. And if I can get just one other person out there to land a new position and get them out of recruiting hell, that's a win for me, that's a win for that person, and that's a win for the show. So, now that we're caught up on that, interviewing is that magical doorway to a career, and that's our topic today. And sometimes those doorways open really easily, and we don't know why, but sometimes they also remain firmly closed, despite our greatest efforts and attempts to almost force them open. I'm almost reminded of that scene from Lord of the Rings where they're trying to go into the mines and they try to force open the door, but they can't. But either way, our guest is here today to help us maybe have a little bit of that magic and understand where we all may be going wrong in our interviews and using her deep experience to help maybe troubleshoot some of those with some great questions today. So, my listeners, it is a pleasure here to invite Barb Waala, executive coach and founder of BarbWaalaCoaching.com, onto our show today. Barb, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on.
I am so happy to be here, and I like that this is all about helping somebody.
Oh,
so if I could help somebody, that would be great.
Right, and I think that's oftentimes the impetus for most of my guests going, oh, I can really make a difference in somebody's life. I'm in.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
I'm glad to hear that. So you and I, to set the stage a little bit here, Barb, we met via LinkedIn through one of my actual listeners here at Recruiting Hell, who turned out to be one of your clients, correct?
Correct.
Gotcha. Yeah. And this episode is dedicated to him. Thomas, you are a great guy. I met him through the podcasting community I'm a part of. And of course, we all stitched that together, which is great. So a big thank you to you, buddy. And of course, as you and I kind of felt out the genesis of this episode, Barb, you've mentioned that you've been doing this HR thing a long time. So giving our listeners a bit of an idea of your expertise, and I guess maybe what I would say, in the gym, they say you put the reps in since about the year 2000 or so. Tell us the Barb Waala story that got you here to this point of being this basically an HR expert.
Yeah. So the short story is I was working for a financial company, and I was working for the manager who was in charge of recruiting and hiring financial reps or if we needed somebody for the office. That was his gig. And he asked me if I would start to help him. Initial interviews, a couple things. What he learned was that people were telling me more because I was the first impression. I was the front office person. I was quote unquote the receptionist, even though that wasn't really my, they were telling me more in that 15 to 20 minutes because he left them with me for 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, that's a long time.
Than he was getting in an hour or two because I was not the person that was interviewing them. So they were telling me everything. We talk about the whatever it was. Well, it just kind of blossomed from there. He realized I was really good at it. So I just kept interviewing, and then I started doing the recruiting and grew from there and worked for the financial industry for a long time, worked at a college, worked in corporate, hiring executives, general managers. But then I also helped hire machinists or whatever we needed on the manufacturing floor as well. And now I'm helping businesses doing consulting, still hiring engineers, sometimes people to help with invoicing or AP project coordinators, whatever it is that the companies need. So I have seen a lot of resumes. I have interviewed a lot of people. I personally look at the resumes, which I know is rare these days.
Yeah.
So I can tell you what I like and I don't like.
Oh, that's for sure. And I think an HR person who uses or who doesn't depend on an ATS system is probably a pretty rare gem these days, I would think.
Yeah, probably has something to do with my age too, but we won't talk about that. I was
14. That's okay.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I was 14 when I started. I'm just saying.
And that's okay. You know what? I know some folks, my wife included, she's 29 for the third, fourth time.
There you go.
And that's okay. And she loves being that age. And you know what? Anybody who says they're 29 for the X number of time, as long as they're young at heart, doesn't bother me.
That's right.
Good deal. So now that we've kind of gone back in time a little bit and we caught up to present day, Barb, I've got a bunch of questions. Obviously, you've seen a lot of stuff, and especially if you're still looking at today's, paper resumes, if you will, and it might be ties, but this is going to be an interesting one because I'm really curious some of the great stuff you've seen and some of the, if you will. So we'll start with some easier questions, and then we'll get to that real sweet spot on sharing your fantastic advice here. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. Let's jump into it. So first question, Barb, is we all know that follow-up is something really important in job seeking, and mostly because job seeking, at least in my experience, has been very much like sales. You have to stay at top of mind for your potential employer and be that kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that person. So from your experience, what kind of follow-up tactics work best for interviewees? And are there different things that work better for maybe a white-collar job versus a blue-collar job?
That's interesting, the white and the blue. I would say kindness and all the things that your mom and your grandma taught you, to be thankful, to be nice to people. You just do the same thing when you're interviewing with someone. So whomever you meet during that interview process, get their card if you can. So you have their email, so you can send them a personal thank you. There's nothing worse than getting this bulk email with 16 names listed. It's nice if you even if you say the same thing, but I do still get thank you notes, like handwritten thank you notes, and those are great, but you don't need to do that if you can follow up with an email. What do I do with it? I mean, I read it. Good point. But if I have it in an email, I keep folders. So I have your email. I'll put it in there. I'll remember that you followed up. It's interesting that you talk about it being sales because you are selling yourself, but then at the other, don't be the car salesman. I don't want you to be pushy. I don't want you to be, sorry, car salesman got a bad rap there. But
some of that stuff is deserved. I get a bunch of friends who are car salesmen. It's like, guys, come on.
Yeah. So we don't, but just be nice, and the thing is when you're interviewing, that's like the first date. You got to be your best, so
So then is there anything different between the two types of jobs, if you will?
Yeah, no, I didn't
It's a big question.
I honestly don't think so.
Okay.
I think that I really think, especially because I've hired both all the time, a lot of times I find the blue collar people follow up with me better than the white collar. I hate, like, maybe it's a pompous thing. They just assume they did well enough and they're going to get it, and they don't follow up. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I get a lot more, even office positions. I get more follow up from those positions than I would from like a general manager or a sales manager position. It's just been my history over the last, 20 years.
Interesting. And that's very, very unusual to hear that there's a difference in the actual follow-up, and maybe it's because of that presumptiveness up the chain in the corporate hierarchy, if you will.
Yeah, or the managers have assistants that usually take care of those things for them, so then it's just not second nature for them to, we could guess, but I'm not really sure what it is.
Maybe there's a research paper there to be written or something like that. But
perhaps
it's very interesting to hear that there is a difference between the two. So if you, perhaps there's a takeaway there. If you are applying for what would be called a white collar job, make sure that thank you note is there. And if you are going for a blue collar job, keep on keeping on. You may not stand out as much from that, but for up the chain kind of stuff, maybe that's a actionable takeaway here. Good stuff.
Correct.
Okay, so this is next question is a bit of a follow-up. So we talked about, how do people follow up with you? And again, you said, be kind, be yourself, be your, don't come across as presumptuous or pompous or anything like that. Can a job seeker be too hungry to be hired? You talked about the car salesman. Those guys are always really hungry for a sale. Can a job seeker be that person, and what kind of examples can you give to tell folks not to do?
Yeah. If you haven't had a position for a while, which shows on your resume, so obviously right there, we know like you haven't had a job for 6 months. If you talk about that a lot while you're in the interview, and it's really just perspective. So if you twist it where I've had the opportunity, it's the choice of words that you use during these 6 months to do this, this, and this while I've been looking for a job, instead of bad mouthing why you were let go, perhaps from your previous employer, bad mouthing things that they did, people that you worked with, and then talk about how if you don't get a job within a certain amount of time, I have had people tell me, like I've got 3 kids and I've got a wife, and my wife doesn't work because I was working 70 hours a week. So she couldn't work, and now we're not making any money, and I need to get a job really fast, and all the things. And I want to know you personally, but maybe not that much. So kind of,
sure.
You got to rein it in. And there's a desperation. And when you're interviewing, I don't want to see it. Like, I probably know that you are. Just try not to show it. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people say, be yourself, but maybe temper that with don't wear all your emotions on your sleeve and, kind of, regurgitate your problems onto people, perhaps. Like, I think that's
Well, and the thing is, I do want you to be yourself. And honestly, if somebody is doing all of that, then I'll think to myself, when you're working, potentially you're going to be the person who's telling everybody all your problems all day long. So, because if you're going to tell me all your problems,
that's
the
true.
First time I met you. So, yeah. So be careful.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. That actually that they're going to do a quick tangent question here, because I'm sure you've dealt with people who, they share things about themselves. When it comes to somebody who maybe has something in their background that isn't maybe what an employer wants, maybe it's a charge of something, or, they made a mistake when they were a younger person, and people do change. Somebody who gets pulled over for drunk driving at age 22 and then has been sober for 12 years at age 35 are probably different people. How do you, if you're that applicant, how am I best talking to you, Barb,